Hey everybody, I'm Matt Ham, one of the co-founders of YouPrint, and you're watching YouPrint Live, a weekly teaching video series. For more, you can subscribe at youprint.life. That's youprint.life. And just so you know, YouPrint is a faith development organization co-founded by myself and Zondervan author Kevin Adams. And our heart is to help people become God's expression in the world. We use inspiration, encouragement, teaching to help people understand who they are in Him. And what we say is how to leave God's fingerprints on the world through their own. So I hope you guys would join us. Check out youprint.life for more. We have a ton of resources, and we're getting ready to roll out a brand new 21-day spiritual cleanse that I think you'll find very, very helpful to really remove some of the kind of toxic spiritual thoughts and habits from your life and really begin to understand who God is and what He's speaking to you so that you can live out that purpose. Because as we say, we're after purpose and passion and calling and meaning and these big words. We break it down for you in a way that you can make it your own. So all of that being said, I want to talk to you today about something that God has shared with me and revealed to me recently, because so often when we're talking with people, mentoring people, walking through life with people, everybody faces circumstances, trials, difficulties, challenges, right? And we face these challenges and we begin to wonder, what's the purpose in this? We can't see beyond our circumstances. It's like we're buried in them instead of rising above them. And we walk through this life with a lot of the kind of Christianese, as we call it. People say, well, God's purpose is that there's a purpose in everything. Everything happens for a reason. Or people quote Scripture even and say, like Romans 8:28, all things work for the good for those who love the Lord and are called according to His purpose. Now, that's meant from a pure heart, right? That is Scripture. We need to be mindful of that. But one of the things that has hit me lately is that God's abundance follows our persistence. God's abundance follows our persistence. Now, how I came to receive that, and I want to share that with you, because it was rooted in Psalm 66. In Psalm 66, I've got it right here, the psalmist writes, "For you, O God, have tested us. You've tried us as silver is tried. You brought us into the net. You laid a crushing burden on our backs. You let men ride over our heads. We went through fire and through water. Yet you have brought us out into a place of abundance." The psalmist sees here that difficulties and trials and challenges and burdens, that they are real. And it says, as although we've gone through the fire and through the water, you have led us out to a place of abundance. And as I read this passage, I couldn't help but think about the Israelites being held captive in Egypt. And it's a really powerful story in the book of Exodus. And you may be familiar with it, but Moses is a shepherd in Midian. And God speaks to him in a burning bush and says, "Moses, I want you to free my people from captivity." See, God's people, the Israelites, were being held captive by the Egyptians. And Moses had a clear burden for this because earlier in his life, he was an Israelite by birth, but he was raised in the house of Pharaoh. And he felt this tension in his heart, and he actually killed an Egyptian one day, defending his own people. But fearful of being found out, he fled into the desert of Midian. It was in the desert of Midian where he was a shepherd for 40 years when God finally came to him in a burning bush and said, "Moses, I want you to lead my people." Moses is incapacitated at this point in time. He says, "I can't do this." And he says, "I have a speech impediment." It's thought that Moses was a stutterer. But God says, "I am." And so Moses goes to Pharaoh, not once, but 10 times, to ask Pharaoh, let God's people go. And on the 10th time, it's 10 series of plagues. God relinquishes, or the Pharaoh relinquishes his grip on the Egyptians, on the Israelites. And what happens there is God's people leave with Moses to go into the desert. Now, this is where the story gets really interesting, because Moses is leading God's people, and it says in the gospel that the Spirit of God went ahead of the Israelites in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Now what we teach at YouPrint is to feel the word. Let's not just look at this as like a story that we're familiar with. Like, put yourself in the sandals of Moses and you see this pillar of cloud leading 1 million people through the desert. And you see this pillar of fire at night that lights up the night sky. And here Moses is following, persisting in faith where God leads. Yet he gets to the Red Sea. He gets to this impasse, right? This impossible thing. And Pharaoh's army at this point in time has caught up with the Israelites. So you have the Israelites standing here at the edge of the Red Sea, this pillar of cloud in front of them, which is the Spirit of God leading them, and the Egyptians are pursuing them from behind. And in that moment, the Israelites begin to complain. The Israelites begin to cry out, "Moses, why have you brought us in the desert to die?" The Israelites lose all faith. They had been held captive for like 400 years, and now they're free, and they're saying it would be better to be back in captivity than to be here and die in the desert. But Moses, the man of faith, shows his faith and his persistence and says, "The Egyptians that you see today, you will see no more. Be still. The Lord will fight for you." Now that's that place, right, in our own lives when we have our circumstances and our own struggles and challenges, and we say, "God, why did you bring me to this place to die? I have no hope here. I have nothing left." And one of the things that God shows us through His story, through the Bible continuously, and one of the things I've learned in my own life is that God takes us into the desert, where the place where we have nothing, so we will understand that He is all we need. You see, sometimes God takes us into the desert because that's the place where we understand that God is all we need. You know, in our culture today, we rely on our education, we rely on our wealth, we rely on our family upbringing, we rely on politics, we rely on our church and religious institutions as the things that will sustain us. But my friends, that is not what sustains us. We have to go into this desert place, not physically, but in our spirit, in our hearts. We have to go to this desert place where we realize that none of these things will sustain us. None of these things will sustain us. We cannot pray to gods that cannot save us. And what God promised to Moses is the same promise that holds true for us today, is that in the desert God will sustain us. Now Moses, the man of faith, has a different perspective than the Israelites. He looks and says, "The Egyptians you see, you will see no more. The Lord will fight for you." You see, Moses persisted. And this is the incredible part of the story. In the gospel, it says in that moment that the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud, the Spirit of God that had gone ahead of the Israelites moved behind. The Spirit of God moved behind God's people. And as I saw that in Scripture and I coupled it with what I had read in Psalm 66, is that God brings us through the trial to a place of abundance. That the abundance of God literally comes behind our persistence. It was Moses' faith, his persistence, that went to Pharaoh not once but 10 times. And then he led the people to a place of impasse, and they had no faith. "Why have you brought us out here to die?" But Moses didn't see the waters of the Red Sea. Moses saw across the Red Sea. He saw the promise that God had made to Abraham, the father of faith. Abraham, the father of many nations, that He would make a nation among him, that He would give him a promised land. Moses saw God's promise across the Red Sea, and he had the faith to persist. The abundance of God came behind the Israelites. And if you know the story, Moses stretches out his hand, the waters of the Red Sea part, the Israelites cross on dry ground, and then the waters consume the Egyptians. And something amazing happens when the Egyptians are crossing through the sea and their wheels start to clog up with the mud, and they say, "Look, the the Lord is fighting for his people. So friends, I share this with you today because God's abundance will follow our persistence. But persistence is an interesting word. I don't think it means what we think it to mean in kind of Western culture. Kind of in American Christianity, we think persistence is a pick yourself up by the bootstraps and get her done and kind of grit and determination. And it's really elevating the strength of man. Persistence is all about, just do it, right? That's the Nike slogan, just do it. Don't give up, don't ever give up. Jim Valvano. These are all fantastic slogans and platitudes that we live our life by. But what happens is we think persistence is our own effort when persistence is truly a submission and a surrender to God. Persistence is driven by our faith to let go of our own strength and to continue in the strength that we have in the Lord. You see, we make a grave mistake in our own lives if we think persistence is about our own effort. Persistence, friends, is about the faithfulness of God and our willingness to trust that. As it says in Proverbs, Solomon so wisely said, is trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. It doesn't say trust in the Lord a little bit, and then you can add your own insight into that and your own understanding, and then you and God together, right? God is my co-pilot. You'll get it done together. No. It says God will do it. God will make your path straight. Lean not on your own understanding. It's in our surrender where we actually persist, and that's the upside down nature of the gospel. The first will be last, the last will be first. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. And so if you're going through a season of struggle today, if you're going through a season of trial, know that the purpose of that is in fact the abundance of God. But you have to persist to the point of surrender. Look across the Red Sea. Understand the promises of God, that he does not lie. And he will deliver you from the Egyptians that you face in your own life. So I want to encourage you guys with this today. And I hope you understand that God's abundance will follow your persistence. As always, if we can help, please let us know. We'd love to schedule a discovery call with you to find out how we can walk alongside you at YouPrint to help you uncover God's unique blueprint for your life and how you can leave his fingerprints on the world through yours. For more, you can go to youprint.life. You can click on schedule a discovery call. You can join our email list. You can check out some of our resources. You can get involved. We hope that you would. You guys have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching.